the tour. I was on tour for a few months with the last movie we made, which was called Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. So we did
Yeah.
67 cities in 3 countries, and our tour ended February 26th in New Orleans, the day after Mardi Gras.
Wow.
So I know. I honestly, as we look back over the tour, every hot spot we were in like a month or 2 months ago or something like that.
Damn.
And all that time I was on the road, I never got so much as a cold. And I was doing a lot of like interactivity. Like we were seeing 1,000, 1,500 people a night. But then after the show, you do like meet and greets and take pictures of people. And every
Right.
time somebody comes back, you give them a big hug and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I'm really surprised that I don't have the plague or something like that after all that exposure, or maybe it's kind of built up my immune system. I don't know. So when, I got home, I was looking at like being home for 2 days, and then it was back out on the road. Like South by Southwest was coming up, and I had a movie debut in there, a documentary that I was in, not one that I made. And
Nice.
then the Tribeca Film Festival, I was scheduled that, and then suddenly things started getting canceled, which at first was a bummer. But then I was like, "You mean I get to sit around the house for a little while?" After having been away for a bit. So yeah, it's the lockdown and the quarantine. Like, I know it's for horrible reasons, but personally, I'm not going crazy. I lose a lot of time. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I'm gonna write. Then I
Yeah.
start reading the news, and suddenly, like, it's 4 o'clock, and all I've done is read the news all day. So I got to learn to be productive again at the same time. I get little things in. Like I've been working on this Netflix show, Masters of the Universe, this anime
Mhm.
reboot that comes out in 2021. So we're into the animatic stage. So I've been able to watch those and like throw in some additional dialogue and script. So every day there's like a little bit of work that gets done, but mostly
Yeah.
it's this weird kind of netherworld where days don't really matter anymore, and it's either like bright or dark, and that's the only difference.
Yeah. They all kind of blend together after a while.
But watching a fuck ton of programming, man. So I went through. I was on tour when the Mandalorian dropped, so I didn't get to see it.
Right.
I've, I've ripped through the Mandalorian, which is excellent. It reminded me of like a TV show from the 70s, which is about the highest compliment I could pay something. I was a child of the 70s and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where I watched a lot of my TV, the 70s and the 80s. And that show felt like something straight out of the 70s in the best possible way. And very, very Star Wars. I've been
Yeah.
watching Little Fires Everywhere, total soap opera. Kerry Washington is pretty amazing. I watched Onward, which the biggest mistake I made was waking bacon and watching Onward, because if you've ever had a dad or a brother, the movie just like gets you right here. So I was
Yeah.
bawling watching that. What else have I watched? Of course, Tiger King, like everybody else.
Yeah. Everyone's watched
Um,
Tiger King.
it seems like it's required viewing at
Do you
this
hate
point.
Carol Baskins now?
I mean, I don't know any of those people, so it's tough to say I hate them. But like, I mean, honestly, none of them seem like real people. Like
Right.
you watch the miniseries, and it's almost like a live action cartoon. Were it not for the fact that a lot of big cats got hurt and killed, like the whole thing is kind of ridiculous to watch, and not ridiculous bad. It's insanely well made, but all the people don't act like normal people. I think
Yeah.
that's what people find so fascinating
So
about it and stuff.
cartoonish.
Yeah, to say the least. So that was a really fascinating watch. What else have I been ingesting?
Yeah.
I went back and started watching old things. I watched this old movie called The Freshman with Matthew Broderick and Marlon Brando. It's from like the early '90s, and it actually held up. It was pretty good. What about you? What are you watching?
Yeah. I was gonna say I finally caught up on like Chernobyl because that came out ages
Yeah,
ago, and I
that'll make you feel good in the middle of a pandemic. You're
I
like,
know, right?
here's some people who have it worse than us.
Yeah, here's some other people who can't breathe, and I was watching it, and I was like, oh man, I feel like I can't breathe right now. It was
Right.
so. I mean, it was incredibly well made, and I absolutely fucking loved it. But it came out ages ago, and we came back from like an LA trip, and we were jet lagged, and I watched the first episode, and I was like, I mean, it's good, but I'm not really hooked on it. And then we start watching it again, and we couldn't put it down. It was
Right.
sensational. And
Especially with a
now,
lot of time on our hands, it's like, well, maybe I can devote a little more time to
yeah,
that than
so
I
we've
thought.
been me and my girlfriend, she's huge into like Japanese stuff, and she speaks the
Mm.
language and everything. So she loves horror movies. So we've been catching up on a lot of Japanese horror movies, which so many that I had never even heard of. I'd never watched the original Grudge movies. I always just
Oh,
watched the shitty American
the
ones.
American ones, right, right, right.
Yeah.
She's
So
giving you
that's
an
been really fun.
education, man. You're getting a film school while you're sitting around.
Yeah, I know. I should like do more with it. I should write something.
What? Just for my own edification, man. Like, so how long you been gaming? When did you start?
Oh, dude. Everyone's been gaming their whole life.
True.
um about 7 years I've been doing the YouTube thing.
7 years. And in that time, you've amassed the audience that you've amassed. That's insane, man. How
Yeah.
happy are you? Every day you wake up, you must be like, oh my God, I get to be me for a living. This
Yeah.
rocks.
There's a couple of moments where you get sucked into like the like show businessy aspects of it, but you kind of have to pull yourself back and remember that it's a really cool fucking job that I get to do, and so many people would do so much to be able to do it. So, and me 7 years ago wouldn't have thought that it would be where it is now, and now we get to raise like we're pushing in on $500,000 raised in like 3 hours. So
I saw that in the 3 hour time. I mean, you guys built an amazing community, and it's nice that you guys can turn to that community in time of need and be like, hey, let's help out some other people.
yeah,
Really, really sweet, man.
and
But wait,
that we get to do it through the internet, which is even cooler.
very, very cool. So wait a second, like what? Give me the moment, like, because there's been many, and if you've been doing it for 7 years and you've watched the business exponentially change, when was the moment that you realized I will never have to work the way I thought I would have to work another day in my life? Like I
Oh,
get to be this. When was that exact moment?
um, probably in the first 2 years. I think the first year and a half was like nothing was happening. I was making about $10 a month on it. And then I
Hmm.
went from making $10 a month to making thousands. And then it went up and up and up. And I could finally like move out of my home and move away from my parents and fund my college and have my own place and all these different things. And it was probably during that when I hit about 500,000 subscribers that it was like, okay, this is sustainable. This is something that I'll probably be able to do for a long time and isn't going to change anytime soon. And
Right.
if this upward trend keeps going, then I'll be in a very good position. So it was
Mm.
pretty early on. It worked out
It's
really well.
so like beautiful, man. Like I know a lot of kids today grew up in that world where like you can watch people game, but like you talk about 7 years ago, like 15 years ago, this wasn't even like a made up job in a sci-fi film. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? It's so wonderful how like creators can create even based around stuff like I'm going to sit here and play a game, which is creative. Like I remember when we were kids, like Star Wars toys were all the rage,
Mhm.
the action figures, and there were some like parents watch groups that were like, this is not play. Like play is going out in the yard and kicking a ball or basketball or hockey or
Right.
whatever, playing some football. This is not play. And
Yeah.
slowly, like that, maybe the perception didn't change for everybody, but I became a storyteller. And
Mhm.
there's a direct line between me having those action figures, and you can only do the movie so many times, right? Like even
Yeah.
if you're going to replicate the movie, you can only do that a few times before you're like, well, what if they did this? And then you start creating an adventure, and that's writing. So like at that point, man, I could draw you a line from me playing with action figures to me doing what I do for a living. And back then in the beginning, people were like, well, that's kid stuff. And now it's
Yeah.
like you literally talk about action figures and make a living off of that. I have loved over the course of the last 25 years just watching, because I came from indie film and that was kind of like a self-made DIY thing. But
Mhm.
watching other self-made DIY communities pop up, man, it's fascinating. And it like I'm never on some level I should be jealous, like, oh my God, that I like get play games for a living. Why didn't I think of that? But
Yeah.
I'm just so happy that it's a thing for anybody. Like when I was a kid, the closest thing to getting paid to play a game was like if you were a Milton Bradley tester or something like
Yeah.
that. But it's what an amazing world we live in, man. I'm sure
Yeah.
you're
That
tired of hearing about it. You're like, this is what I do for a living, bro. I
no,
wake
no.
up every morning and I live it. But like for somebody from the outside, nothing but like esteem and wonder, man. It's cool what you've been able to accomplish.
That's I appreciate that. Thank you. But it is one of those things. Either some people hate it, and there's some of that perception is still there of people being like, "Nah, it's not a real job. Like you're playing games for a living. You should not take it too seriously." Blah 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 blah.
Anything that creates an audience, like that's a job. That's like saying, like, by that same token, a stand-up comic is not a job.
Yeah,
Like, of course it is. If you put asses in seats, guess what? That's not your job. That's your fucking career at that point, man.
yeah,
And you could put asses in seats, like by sitting there and playing games. That's why I was like, something that a lot of people would dismiss is like, that's you're playing a game. It's like but you've turned it into a creative endeavor
yeah,
at the same time. Like that's if everybody out there in the world who sits there and struggles sometimes and goes like, why can't I do this and this? Sometimes you got to look at people that have done things, even things that aren't in your field or purview, and take inspiration from it. And for people that like would knock like what you do for a living, who are just like, that's not a real job, like that ain't the way to go. What I would do is like, even if it irritated me that
hmm
somebody was playing games for a living, I would use that as fuel, aspirational fuel for myself. Cause I'm like, look, I have no respect for what they do, but if this person is making a living doing that, anything is possible. And I have no
right.
excuse not to pursue my dream as well. So not only do you get to do it for you and your family, I'm sure your parents were ecstatic when you like moved out and stuff like, oh my God, this is for real. But like aside from that, what you do simply by being you, simply by playing games, inspires other people to chase their dreams. Do you get
Yeah,
that? Like I encounter that all the time in my line of work where people are like, hey man, like fucking yoga hosers made me want to do something. I'm like, yoga hosers of all the shit I've done. That's but you can never tell what it is. Something, one aspect of your story, your life story, touches somebody else and fires them up. It worked for me that way because I saw Richard Linklater's film Slacker in 1991 on my 21st
right.
birthday. And I was like, I think if this counts as a movie, I think I want to try to make a movie and stuff.
Yeah,
And so it lit me and boom. So I'm sure you're lighting the fires of a bunch of people out there and have been doing so for years. And not just in the gaming world, but people who are like, oh my God, if this guy could do that, maybe I can open a restaurant. It's crazy how inspiration
yeah.
works.
Yeah, that's kind of what I hope people glean out of these events that we do, because the majority of what I've done today is just sit with a camera and a link and be like, here, go donate. But so
Right.
many people who do the charity thing expect it to be so much harder than it actually is. You can make it harder. You can make it a spectacle. You can put on a show and do stuff. And every now and then we'll do it for Christmas where we do it all dressed up and everything. But
Right.
it really does not take that much. If you have an audience and anybody can literally go away and do this, what I'm doing right now, for this exact event. And if you just want to do it, then just pick up a link and go. That's really all it takes. If you have a phone, you have more in your hand now than I did when I started off doing this. So you can just make a vlog, you can make a video, you can go live on YouTube or Instagram or Twitter or anything these days and just make a change in someone's life.
And sometimes I'll be honest with you, like, despair is infectious. Depression is infectious. Um, if you're sitting there reading a depressing news cycle, it's going to worm its way into
Yeah.
every part of your look on life and how you interact with people. This sounds like a dad type thing to say, but like something I've noticed over 26 years I've been doing this shit professionally. If you throw yourself into creating something, um, it's incredibly therapeutic. Number one, just on the basic level of it distracts you away from all the
Yeah.
negative news, and focuses you on something, refocuses you completely, on something that's not related to like all the depressing news that's going on.
Yeah.
Number two, there's two paths in this world, man. There's destruction and there's creation. And the destruction path is filled like and packed because it's easy to break things down. It's easy to tear things down. It's easy to mock others and stuff like that and not put a little piece of yourself on the line. Creation lanes are wide open, because it takes a little bit of oneself to be like, I'm going to put this out there, for fear of mockery, for fear of failure, which is the bigger thing. Don't
Yeah.
ever be afraid of failure. The only failure in life is not trying the thing that you dream about trying. And unless the thing you dream about trying is killing people, don't do that. But if your dream is just like, oh, like, I watch Jack, he plays games, like, wow, I would like to do that. Do it. Give it a shot, man. Doesn't mean you're going to be as successful as him, but like,
Yeah.
you will have the success that's not measured in viewers or money or something like that. It'll be a personal success, a victory over doing nothing, over the
Yeah.
sameness of doing nothing. Like creation is the cure, man. And I'm not saying it's always going to lead to success, people getting rich, it becoming a job. Like you and I are insanely lucky in as much as we chased our passions and it turned into something. But
Yeah.
even if it didn't turn into something for me, I still would have kept doing it because the thing is worth doing in and of itself, man. Like
Right.
when I saw people making indie films, I was like, that they're human beings just like me. I mean, they're not like robots or aliens or something or gods. Like these are normal people and they're just picking up a camera and doing an extra normal thing. You know, sometimes it requires like a reasonable amount of unreasonability. You know, reasonability dictates that you can't make a living playing video games and stuff, but you had a reasonable amount of unreasonability. An unreasonable amount of unreasonability is when you're like, I'm going to fly without a jetpack and you step off a roof and die. But a reasonable amount of unreasonability is going like, I know there's a status quo and I know how things go and I know what's expected of me, but I'm just going to shift to the left or to the right and see what happens. Like
Right.
that's a reasonable amount of unreasonability. It's not people online take, you know, there's lots of unreasonability and nobody ever wants to move from their position. Nobody ever wants to be wrong. This isn't about right or wrong. This is about looking at the world and the way most people perceive the world and how it's set and how this is what you're meant to do and this is what other people do and figuring out your way into it, a back door into it, if you will, which sounds sexier than I meant it. But like it's definitely there for the taking. And if you take the time to be creative in any way, sitting down, like, you know, writing a blog is the obvious thing and whatnot. I'm talking about picking up popsicle sticks and tying them together, like just
Yeah.
making a thing. You wind up having like taking your head out of the negative game. More importantly, at the end of it, you have a thing to show for your time, like
Right.
something that not everyone can ever say in life, like a thing that is uniquely yours that wouldn't exist without you making that step forward. So as we all sit inside and whatnot, aside from helping people today and people that absolutely could use the help, help yourself when you got
Hmm.
the time. Help yourself towards something that, like, for years you've been like, you know, I've always wondered if I could do that sort of thing. Oh my God! If you've never had the time to try, now is the
Yeah.
time. You have nothing but time, man.
Yeah, keep trying to encourage people to do that. Well, it's funny to see as well because you kind of see what's important to people now during a time like this when everyone is forced to stay at home. They figure out, oh, this is more important to me than I thought it was, and this
Mm.
is really not that important anymore. The trivialities of going out and how you appear or how you think you appear to other people, all of that stuff is kind of washing away for people. And for me, it's like picking up shows that I didn't watch and stuff to try and get an inspiration here and there. But I see so many people who are picking up new hobbies. People are reading more. People are like playing games they've never played. All that kind of stuff is just so cool to see. And like you said, what better time to do it now when you're forced to stay inside and you can't actually do anything else?
It's absolutely true. And this is one of the only, I mean, the first time in my lifetime I remember anything remotely like this, like where the whole world just had to stop. You know, and now that we've gone through it or we're going through it, I know it's, you know, hell on the economy and whatnot, but
Yeah.
there's something to be said for like, you know, a month break. This is a world that never ever stops, and like in, you know, it's horrible that we're all inside, and horrible that people are dying, of course, and horrible that we're, you know, we're facing the pandemic. But at the same time, like weird, like little miracles have popped up. You know, like the porpoises coming back into the Venice canals, like
Yeah.
the toxic cloud, you know, over the industry, heavy industry in China, like dissipating for a minute. Like the Earth is seems like it's taking a moment to heal. I'm gonna hang up
Yeah.
that phone. That's how we deal with phone calls in this house. Sorry, Mr. Spielberg and other one. So yeah, it's. I mean, I'm believe me, I'm not saying this is the greatest time, but like you got to find silver linings sometimes to the dark
Right.
clouds. And right now, that is a silver lining a bit. Like maybe the Earth is taking a moment to heal because Lord knows we keep it working 24/7.
Yeah, for sure. Um, to to change tracks a little bit,
Hmm.
Michael from Tiltify, who is setting all this up and helps out and everything, he messaged me asking, "How did you come up with Silent Bob?" He's very
Hmm.
curious
Silent
about it.
Silent Bob was a necessity because I wanted to put Jason Mewes in the movie. He's the guy that plays Jay.
Hmm.
So he's a true American original. He's got a Twitch channel and stuff. He's something of a gamer, but you know, he's a long way from me. But he, you know, that's his passion, that's his hobby. Sometimes he sits on Twitch, just makes Legos and stuff like that.
Right.
So Jason, one of the most original human beings I've ever met, a true one-off, and I hitched my wagon to his star years ago. I would always like say, "Man, you're funny. Like, I wish somebody would put you in a movie. I would love to see if other people think you're as funny as we do, or if you're just Jersey funny and stuff."
Right.
And then years later, when I saw Slacker and realized, oh, I wanted to make a movie, I realized I was going to be the one to put him in flick. I was like, I'm totally putting you in this movie. Now, Jason's stream of consciousness is kind of brilliant. Like, basically, he's just always entertaining to be around, always has been. He needs no help. So
Yeah.
I wanted him to, like, the Jay character to essentially be Jay, just constantly talking and yapping and stuff like that. But I didn't to him for him to speak to because, you know, he was brilliant in and of himself. So I needed somebody to stand next to him that he would always be talking to, so that he wasn't just standing in front of a convenience store talking to himself and
Right.
soliloquizing and stuff. And the other guy didn't have to say shit, because I feel like Jay's going to just say it all. He's a motor mouth. So I wrote the part for that reason, to balance the Jay character. And I was intending to give it to my friend Michael Bellicose, who I grew up with. He's in Clerks. He's the guy who's like, Dante goes 37. My girlfriend sucked 37 dicks. He goes, in a row. That's the guy who I thought was going to play Silent Bob. I wrote the part for him. I was going to play Randall, the guy who works in the video store, who Jeff Anderson played, because you know, that's why he has all the best jokes. But as we got close to production, I was like, I'm not an actor. What am I fucking thinking, man? I'm barely a writer, and I know I'm not a director, but like, I can't act. I can't memorize all this dialogue. So I gave the part to Jeff Anderson. But I was like, if this is the one and only movie I ever make, and I was putting it on my own credit cards and stuff like that, I was like, if this is the only time I'm ever going to make a movie, if this don't work out, whether it works out or not, I said, I at least want to be in the movie. That way, like years from now, as I'm still paying this shit off with 3 jobs, every once in a while, if I ever get the notion, like, you should try that again, I'll pop this tape in and see what I looked like when I made the worst decision of my life. So I said, I'm going to be Silent Bob. Plus, I know Jay real well, and Jay had never acted on camera, so I could be that much closer to him and like telling him how to act and what to do and stuff like that. So I wound up backing into the part. Like, it was me going like, well, I took the part away from Mike. I was like, Mike, you were going to play Silent Bob, but I'm going to have you play this other guy. He's like, I don't care. And I took Silent Bob. I was wearing a long trench coat in those days because I was a big fan of the comedian Sam Kinison, and he wore a trench coat. And so I decided to take that into the character as well. And the backwards baseball cap, I wasn't even a baseball cap kind of guy, but I figured it gave him an edge. So I put on the backwards baseball cap. And all of that shit, like, that was not the aim. I was not like, this is what I want to be in life. I want to be Silent Bob. I backed into that shit, and it defined the rest of my life. Like, I just, you know, got done touring Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, a sequel to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back that we made 18 years after the other one. So it's, you never know the thing that's going to, you know, become your passion. George Carlin, who is my favorite comic of all time, and just a brilliant creator in and of his own right. He didn't want to be a stand-up comic. He wanted to be Danny Kaye in movies. The Danny Kaye, the song and dance man from like Hans Christian Andersen and stuff like that. That's who he wanted to be. Comedy, he just did as a side gig. And yet that defined who he was and who he is. And we still think of him as like one of the greatest comedians that ever lived. So sometimes you aim for something and then something else becomes the goal. When you started playing on YouTube, that's my version of 1980s games.
It's exactly how it went.
With a joystick. When you started playing, like, was the end game this, or was it just like, I'm doing this because I think it'd be fun to have people watch me play a game?
I mean, always going to be the latter, because I wasted so much time playing games when I was younger anyway. And then when I was like in my,
but apparently not a waste. It was all training.
It was on the job training, exactly as planned. But I went to college for like music stuff. I played drums at the time, and I wanted to learn more about drums and music and how it was made. But my course was kind of all over the place, and it wasn't focused on music solely. So I kind of lost interest in it and left. And
Mm.
then I kind of fell into watching YouTube people because I played a lot of games and I wanted to see how you got better at games. How do you learn this game better? How do you shoot those guys faster? And I happened upon a couple of YouTubers who were doing it, and I didn't know that it was a job. I was watching them do it, and I thought they were just doing it for their own spare time, their own amusement, and they were giving over tips. And then I started doing it a little bit myself because I thought that's fun. I was miserable. I was depressed. Didn't really have any friends, and I had nowhere to go. And I lived in such a shitty place that I just wanted to. I like yelled into the void and hoped that some people shared the same sort of opinions and kind of came back to me with some sort of like positive vibes. And I found the people who kind of clicked with me. And then it was ages after that the YouTuber was like, yeah, so this is my full-time job. And I fucking blew my mind. I never aimed for that. I just found out at that point that you could do it as a job. And then I just kept making and making and making. And the better I got at it, the more I could do it. And I went back to college again. And luckily it kind of took off since then. But no, it was never, ever my intention that it would turn into what it is now. I didn't even know this is a possibility back then. I didn't know you could do this type of thing to this level back then.
And you know what I hear in the kind of in the center of your origin story is not that dissimilar from mine. You had to find your tribe first. You had to find your people. Like thank God for the internet, man. Pre-internet, like we couldn't find each other. Once the internet happened, then you could find like-minded individuals. But not only did you find like-minded individuals, you found like-minded individuals that like set you on a path. Like where
Yeah.
suddenly you were like, this is a possibility. So anyone like to me, because I saw Slacker and that made me want to be a filmmaker. Richard Linklater is like a Mount Rushmore name for me. Who were your Mount Rushmore names when you first started like YouTube gaming?
Oh God. Well, the guy that I watched first, who was doing like Battlefield 3 videos, his name was Level Cap Gaming,
Mm,
and he was good at the game. He gave over like insightful information, and then he started opening up and showing videos of his life and his vlogs, and finally found out his name and things like that. And that kind of like ushering away everything and kind of opening himself up to his audience was what
mm,
really inspired me. And then guys like PewDiePie were doing it. They were massive at the time, and they were just like they were the soaring thing that was everybody was watching it. Everyone was obsessed with it because it was the most fastest rising channel of all time. And those kinds of things always just inspired me to
Can't touch our faces.
to just get out there and kind of try stuff for myself. It was cool to see them and hear their stories and hear where they came from, and knew that, oh, they're not that different to me. Because the thing that always happens, and I've done a live show tour as well, where I can kind of get up and talk about my life and explain where I came from and who I am, and it's kind of stand-up comedy in a way,
Yeah,
mixed
I
with
do the same thing. That's awesome, man. Like, so not only did you nail like the dream job, but you also figured out the adjuncts as well, where you're like, well, if I can do this, then I bet you I can stand on a stage and just talk about my life. Is that what I'm
yeah,
understanding? Oh, that
yeah.
rocks.
And it's done in a comedic way, and we kind of just take stories from youth. But the whole message of the show at the end of it was to show that I didn't come from anywhere special. It wasn't some sort of miracle. There was no secret wine that I drank that gave me superpowers or anything. And I'm here on a stage talking to everybody because you find something you like, you persevere, you work hard, a little bit of luck, and then you end up kind of where you are. And that it's that thing where you hope that some people go out of that room, and the show ends with the line, be the hero of your own story. So the hope is to like give people that
Awesome.
story to be like, yeah, you can do it. It's not that difficult. You just have to work hard at it sometimes, and then it'll work out. Doesn't work out for everybody, but if you're not trying, then you'll never know.
So damn true. And sometimes, like early on when I started my career, of course, it was like all about me. I wasn't thinking about anybody else. I was like, I want people to see my movie, and I
Right.
want to sell my movie. Then the longer you can, if you get lucky enough to get in, the longer you stay in the job, it's less about what you can get out of it or what you want than like this sounds weird and it's going to sound like I don't mean it to sound this lofty, but there becomes this weird responsibility like to the audience
Yeah.
because you got there through through a specific means and you got there by being in the audience, and it'd be weird to get to the other side and then pull the ladder up or fucking burn down the path so that nobody could follow you.
Yeah.
So once you get in there, suddenly after a while, you want to like that's what drives me. It's not like, ooh, we got paid this, or ooh, like the critics said this. What drives me is like the audience going, you know, I watch what you do and like it makes me want to do something.
Right.
And that's your payback. The same way that like, you know, watching Slacker made me want to do something. Then you realize if you're one of the lucky people who's you know got picked or whatever and ascended, like you want to be that person for somebody else. You want somebody to be like, look, that guy is no better than me, but he did this thing. That girl, she's no better than me, but she did this thing.
Yeah.
And like try it, because then that says a lot about your legacy. It's weird. Like you spend a long time hoping or dreaming to get like a dream job or something. And then when you get it at a certain point, it becomes about what is this all going to mean? Like,
Yeah.
how long will this last? And what am I doing with that time and stuff? And so the idea of like telling people you could do this, like I think about 10 years into my career is when I started getting very vocal about that, you know, and for the last 15 years, it's been telling people to like go make shit, go create, make something, make your own thing. You never know where it's going to lead, man. At the very least, you have something that not everyone has, and it's your very own. At the very most, it could become Jack's life. It could become my life, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah. Yes, it's good advice.
Or better than that. I mean, that's the thing. Like some people probably look at us and they're like, "You guys aren't aiming high enough." And those are the
Yeah.
cats that keep going and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm happy with what I got. I'm content.
Yeah. No, stuff definitely got very crazy very quickly for me. And then it was that thing where you kind of just pull back and be like, I could keep pushing this thing a million miles an hour, but I think I'd burn myself out and I wouldn't enjoy it as much.
Mm,
And if it just becomes, it's great that it became a career, but if that's all it is anymore, then why am I even doing this? Because like you get to a certain point where it's like, okay, I feel like I can slow down a small bit. I can actually just enjoy myself and do cool shit with it rather than
right.
just trying to constantly gain and grow and amass more people. I'd rather appreciate what I have and who have come than try and push it further constantly just because I can.
So smart, man. Yeah, I get that. Like incredibly successful people, like you know, are a void that cannot be filled. So they'll keep going even after
Yeah.
like they've won. But I'm like, remember that moment in Aliens where like Ripley finally takes over and all the Marines are getting killed by the aliens, and then she fucking starts blowing people away, and then she gets like drags Hicks into the car, and you know they're all like, "God, we're getting out of here," and they blast through the wall, and she's just driving like fucking mad. And at a certain point, Hicks is just like, "Ease up, Ripley. You're just grinding metal. Ease up." I
Yeah.
always think of that when it's like you did it, like you did what you wanted to do, man. Like it's not about world domination. It was this one thing you wanted to do, and then beyond that you did all these other things. Like ease up, you're just grinding metal at this point, man. Like
Yeah.
you've taken it pretty damn far. Ambition is a wonderful thing, but it's also a haunting thing, which sometimes you know it leaves you in this place where you read about somebody else's success and suddenly you measure it against your own, and
Yeah.
things have no relation to one another. And so it's taken me years, man, but like I know how to deal with those feelings now. Whenever I feel like if I have some feeling like, you know, I'll read something online and you get like jealous or mad or something like that. And then it's you able to figure out, oh, I know what that is. That's just me worried about my own relevancy. However,
Right.
I did a thing. Like relax. Like, you know, you're there. Like you don't have to, you're grinding metal and stuff. That
Yeah.
ambitious voice, the same one that gets us where we want to be, never fucking stops. And that's the only downside, because you'll get to a place where you feel like I I think I'm content. I fucking rock this. I can't believe I got here. And then that fucking nagging voice, which was good enough to get you there in the first place, just keeps going like, what? Be satisfied with this?
Yeah.
More. So you have to figure out how to balance the voice of ambition, particularly once you get to a place that you consider to be an achievement, and never let the world tell you whether you succeeded or not.
Right.
You know whether you've succeeded or not.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Kevin, I think we're going to have to wrap up the call here, but thank you so much for coming on and chatting. It's been,
Thanks for having
this
me.
is exactly my type of conversation. I love this shit. And everyone at home has just been like talking about it and saying how inspirational it is. So I think you've definitely lifted some spirits. So thank you for that.
Good. That's the idea, man. We want everyone out there creating, especially through this, man. Like
Yeah.
it'll take your mind off it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for doing this.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time.
No problem.
Great. Well, it was good chatting. Everybody in chat, say bye.
Excellent chatting with you, man.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll meet you in the real world someday. We'll cross paths.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.